Well, good evening. Welcome. Good evening, Yar. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you. Just want to say welcome, good evening, and welcome to everyone joining our web conversation today on St. Luke's Facebook page. We're so happy to have you with us. I'm Robin Withers, and I'm a member of St. Luke's. I've been a member for about um, I'll say, I think this is my fourth pageant coming up. I tend to count time in pageants, so that's just how I do it. My fourth Christmas pageant coming up. So it's been about 4 years. And I live here in San Diego. I've lived here for the last 10 years, but my home, I was actually born in Denver, Colorado. So I miss the snow, I miss the seasons, I miss all of those things that people tend to come to San Diego for. I actually would like to have seasons and a little bit of snow and more rain and stuff. But I've been in the field of education for about 33, 35 years. I work for an organization called Avid. But more importantly, my heart and my ministry, I believe, is in education and um, paving and working with teachers to create a better future for our students, one of belonging and nurturing. So Yara, it's good to have you with us this evening. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Yar. I'm turning 24 actually this month during the pandemic. So last year I graduated with my bachelor's degree in medical anthropology. And it's been a year since graduation, so no, I still don't know what I'm doing with my life. But I'm more so going with the flow. And right now I published a book, which I'm going to share one of my poems from today. Or self-published 2 books. I've been going to St. Luke's since I was 4 years old. So basically, I grew up. That was the church that I grew up in. I've lived in San Diego most of my life, in my whole life, basically. And yeah, so I've always enjoyed, the sunny weather. I've traveled different places, but there's nothing like, being at home and being, in the weather where we're at. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else where there's 4 seasons. I'm in San Diego. So yeah, and yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now. And I know during the pandemic with jobs and everything, it's like spurred out. You really don't know what you're doing. So I'm kind of like in the same boat, but I just became the youth mentor for St. Luke's, and I'm very excited to just be able to share the gospel with kids and to be able to be there and be a mentor with them and for them. So I'm excited for that role. And yeah, I'm just excited for the journey, that God has placed me in and to be able to be here also and do this live today.
All right.
And yeah, but I just wanted to start it off by just praying first and then just coming to it. So God, I just thank you so much for this night. I thank you for the topic that we're going to talk about tonight, Lord. And I just pray and thank you for those who are listening, Lord, and that they'll just be able to receive everything that you want them to receive. And yeah, and I just thank you for just the message that we're going to talk about. Amen. So yeah, so Awaken Agape, I published it this year, and I wanted to read a poem called Unashamed. Yay, she got a copy. Unashamed, because I feel like it's going to tie into the message today, which is God, race, and grace, and how we're to be unashamed of the gospel, even unashamed of things that God loved, which was grace. He created us, He created the human race. So yeah, just being unashamed of being able to talk about it today. So here goes. I walk in truth, I run with boldness to preach the gospel unashamed. I am no longer afraid of the world that hated him first. He is my steadfast love, my never-ending worship. I'd be a fool to run away, for he is my quench thirst. I am free indeed, for it is him who called me to be free. I am no longer me, but he has taken it in holy captivity. O God, I am unashamed, for you have created this world, you have structured and fashioned it. Never can I look in the beauty of the earth and not remember who was here first. My life has become a journey with you and me, and my past no longer a record. For without you, it has become a desolate well. But your river has flowed through my shell and has buried religion, death, and hell. And I just wanted to talk about the last part where it talks about burying religion, death, and hell, and how that relates to the topic today. It's when we talk about religion, there's so many different religions. Like people have their own opinion of what it is. And when I say God burying that, it's no longer us focusing on the opinions, but more so the truth. So today, the topic is God, race, and grace, and we're super excited to dive in and just share, our hearts and what we believe God is saying with this topic.
I thank you, Yaar. Well, would you like to just begin? We'll start with we have really three points to our question, or 3 points to the triangle, is looking at God, race, and then grace. And it doesn't have to be in necessarily that order, but really looking at the question is, where have we seen God's grace at work in our lives, especially in the midst of what's going on in America right now? And where do we recognize? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get the and most recognizing where we see where we see Him at work in our lives during this time, and then really how we carry that forward. So just thinking around that topic. So when you think about how we see God's grace work in our life, especially around the issues or what's going on currently with race and some of the tensions, and I will use the word tension because there is racial tension. I know that I feel it. So where do you see yourself, or where do you see God's work at your life right now, or where are you currently?
Yeah, so even like with the topics and the things that's been going on, I feel like God has been like tugging on people's hearts and revealing people's hearts, So when it says in the Bible, what we speak out of our mouth, it's in our heart. We can't just speak, just, because, we can hold our tongue, but sometimes because there's a lot of talk right now, a lot of opinions, a lot of, arguing, and a lot of tension. And I feel like that reveals our hearts and like where we're at. So we can and I feel like even the pandemic has revealed our hearts, because we're in a place where it's like the unknown. We're in a place where we're confused about what's tomorrow. We want to lash out. We want to be angry, and so there's things that we have a right to be angry about, like with racial tension, and like the racial tension and, the discrimination and racism and all of that. But I feel like right now God is, revealing hearts and even like showing us grace, because I feel like there's like a different spectrum where it's like with like unbelievers and those who are believers. Like as believers, we're called to still extend out grace, no matter how we feel, no matter our opinions of, race, no matter how we feel what's wrong. It's like we're still meant to extend out grace, because we can even look at Jesus' life and see that as an example. Like, everything that he believed, like so many people didn't believe what he believed. It wasn't like he's gonna be like, oh, like you don't believe in God, you don't believe in the message that I'm preaching, so here you get stoned, like let me go and like yell back at you. Like he didn't show that. Like he showed it with grace. So because that example, we're also able to extend grace. Like, hey, like you believe in this certain thing, but I believe in another thing that's outside of our own belief system. And it's like, how do we then extend, grace to be like, okay, like, let me just listen of what you have to say, So, and I mean, like, there's some people who like don't want to like listen at all. Like they have like their point of view, especially with race, like, oh, like, I grew up in this, in this environment, so I'm going to believe this one construed, thing, where it's like some people, they are racist and they believe this one thing. It's like, you're not going to be there like, hey, like, let me try to change your mind. Like, let me try to argue with you, because their belief isn't going to change. So it's like, how do we then extend grace for those who don't, don't fully understand? Maybe they've been like, grew up in that environment where they're taught like, like Black people are bad, or like they're taught like negative things about African Americans, Black people in general, and like they're like, what, I don't want to be in that bubble where I also have the same belief, but I want to now understand. So it's then, how do we then extend grace to those type of people? Because you're not gonna, yes, you're gonna extend grace to all types of people, but you're not gonna just try to sit there and argue with someone who doesn't want to understand. But it's like, for those who actually want to understand, it's like, how do we then extend grace and be like, what, we're of different colors, but I see that you're trying to understand. I see that you're trying to understand like my life and what I've gone through because of the color of my skin. So let's sit down and let's try to have that conversation, instead of like, oh, like you're this, so like this whole population, if you're Caucasian, you believe in this, and instead of being like, oh, like you want to understand, so let's have that conversation. So yeah,
You know, I appreciate you saying. I'm turning a little light here because I can't see my notes. I'll turn it off in a moment. But I was taking notes as you were speaking. But I appreciate you speaking about us talking together, and then how do we extend grace in light of our anger or our frustration, because that's actually been quite a bit on my mind recently. Is that because I would be very untruthful if I didn't say that there's a part of me that's very angry.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that's very angry. And how do you use that anger as a fuel to propel you and move you forward, as opposed to using it as something that consumes you and destroys you? So I actually looked up the word grace, because I said, you know, people always say mercy, mercy. But what is it? But we don't always call out like for grace, or you want someone to give you grace on something, but what does that really mean? So I looked it up. It talked about it being love and mercy given to us by God, because God desires us to have it, not necessarily because of anything we have done to earn it. And that was really powerful, because it's like grace would be like I think of like a parent relationship. You know, grace is you still getting the love of your parents, or you're getting your not because you've earned it, but truly because they love you and they desire you to have it. So when I think about extending grace right now, it's difficult. But what I find that when I can when it's a little bit more easily extended, because we're called to do that as Christians, but it is through, as you said, your conversation. And how do you have conversations with people? How do you keep people in the room or keep people engaged? Because I really firmly believe is that it's through knowing and getting to know each other's heart.
Yeah.
And each other's journey. Even if we don't agree the same thing, but I believe all people want three things. They want to feel loved, unconditionally loved. They want to be secure, knowing that I'm safe, knowing that I'm physically, psychologically safe. And the third thing is knowing that that they matter, that somehow they matter in this world. And so those are three things I think all people really want. And if we can meet around those three things, and know that even though we disagree, your opinion to me matters, because the more I understand what you think and how you feel, the more I can understand and how I can move closer to you. Because I agree with you, there are some people that aren't. I mean, I'm 61 years old. I turned 61 in March. And we chuckled the other day, because I said, you're actually old enough to be my daughter. I said, well, I guess we could even go one more generation, maybe granddaughter. But it's 60, like Baldwin says, you know, I gave you want progress, you want change, you want us to wait. I gave you my great-grandparents' years. I gave you my grandparents' years. I gave you my parents' years, and I've given you 61 years of mine. How much more time do you need to affect change? So it still is about how keeping people in the room, keeping people engaged in the conversation. And as you were saying, really through the mind of Christ, because it's not easier. There are daily microaggressions and macroaggressions that happen that would repel us, or that we would say, you know, maybe we should just go our separate ways, or maybe, you know, we're fighting a losing battle, or maybe, but then we come back to the Word, and then the Word tells us that, you know, Jesus was he was a disruptor. I like that. He was a true abolitionist. He was a disruptor. He said, you know, I'm going to destroy to rebuild. Because sometimes you really can't transform. Someone said to me, well, we need to reimagine. And I said, well, it's hard for me to reimagine something like slavery. What would that look like if we reimagine slavery? I mean, what does that really mean?
Well, sure.
Reimagine, you know, or to reform it, or to transform it. How about we abolish, tear down, and build up again? And rebuild to what it really should be. So that gives me faith that Jesus was a radical. He was an abolitionist. And he calls us to be disruptors.
I know, even he was one who shook people, you know, especially with the those who were the religious folks, where, you know, they're like, you know, I I read the Bible, I speak in tongues, I pray this out loud, all this stuff. They had all the answers, but still, Jesus was, shaking up some feathers, and like for them, because people regard them as like the high people, with the Pharisees and such, like they were looked like highly of them, and like Jesus, like no, like he humbled them, but they didn't want to be humbled. And it's like even now, like when people think that they're higher than others, or have like their own perception of what being higher means, it's like no, like he's here to humble you. Like it says those who exalt themselves will be humbled, or those humble themselves he will exalt them. What does that mean? And it's just like we're not meant to like exalt ourselves as one is better than the other. And I feel like that's kind of like the picture of like why like the topic of racism is so important, is because I know you were saying like the things that humans like need, and I think one of them also would be like to be understood, and it's like you don't have to like try to act like like there's like all these answers, but it's like more so, or like we need all these answers, or we need like all these things to be fixed, but it's just more so like being understood, like being understood of where they're coming from, how they're feeling, like how this has affected them, in a sense of looking at them as a human being. Because I feel like once you try to understand someone by being in their shoes, by getting to talk with them, by hearing them, it's like now you have like a new view of their life, and it helps you like see it in a different way, where you're just like, wow, like we're all human at the end of the day. No one's above the other because of the color of your skin. And I also liked how you were saying like it makes you angry, like there's, and like for me, I feel like I have like that advocate heart where it's just like when someone's like hurting somebody else, or like saying like negative things to someone, I'm just like, man, like it makes me angry, because I'm just like, man, like I want to stand up for that person, you know and it's just like what you're saying is not right, what you're doing is not right. But it's just then like it's like, how do I then do it in a way that's still godly, in a way that's still represents
Yes.
And I just look at this verse where it's 1 John 18, where it says we love because he first loved us, and because he's love, like God is love. So it's like we, like those who share. It actually just reminds me of there was this story where this man, like he was helping this poor man, with food, with money, and he asked, he was like, "Are you Jesus?" And it's just like when we, so it's like that pure love where it's like you can't like there's no form of it, there's no like, it's unconditional. It's like something that we didn't have to like go and do something for. And like it kind of reminds me of like grace, where it's like when we extend our grace, it's not us extending our grace, it's the grace that God has given us for us to then extend the grace, And it reminds me of a verse where it also talks about like, if we want to talk about someone's like log in their eyes, why don't we look at the log in our eyes? Yeah, it's like as human beings, we can't like the reason why we can't judge, the reason why we're called to extend grace and called to love is because we also have our own issues, our own problems, where we can't look at somebody else and be like, oh, that's an issue, I see you doing this, I see you doing that, because it's like all these other issues that we also have. And the only person who can judge us, because he's perfect, is God, is Jesus, And that's why we're called to extend grace, is because if we don't have like, if we can't extend grace, how can God give us grace? It's like saying, and also talk about forgiveness. It's like if we can't forgive others, God can't forgive us. So we're like, wow, like why can't God forgive us? Like you think like, oh, because he's high, he's mighty, like of course he's supposed to forgive us, like we're just humans and all this stuff. But it's like, no, we don't want to do the first part where we don't want to forgive. We don't want to extend grace and to extend grace to us. And it's not even about like it's not even about our issues, not even about our opinions. It's just more so about like us and God, our own relationship with God. Like if you're not going to be able to extend grace, then don't expect grace, But if you extend grace, expect grace, because who gives you the grace. It's not you giving yourself the grace, it's God giving you the grace. So when you've been through some hard stuff, when the things you've done, and the things you've said and all that stuff, and God is still able to forgive you, God is still able to love you, God is still able to give you that grace, then you're just like, you see humans as like, wow, like they're dealing with all these things as well, And like, sometimes what we say may not be right, and most of the time it isn't. it's just like, man, how do we still then explain grace? And I can like think about all these verses in my head where it even talks about like love is what brings us to repentance. You know, it's not like because we're humans, because we also have our emotions. It's like when we get shown like love, like that wall breaks down. Like we're not able to be angry forever. You know, we're not able to hold all the anger, all the hurt, all the things, because when love comes in, it like washes all of that away. When someone, it's like when you're having a bad day and someone comes and like, you know, says they want to buy you some food, or like you don't have money and like someone gives you money, it's like there's like joy, like the rest of your day is happy, because we can't live in like that death or that like, you know, that anger, that sadness forever, because that's not what we're meant to carry. We're meant to carry love. We're meant to carry grace and all that stuff. So.
And sometimes we have a hard time accepting that gift, like when someone does something for us, and at least I'll speak for myself. I'm like, well, why did they do that? They don't know me. Well, why would they do that? Well, what do I need to do to pay them back? Or now what? Now, how am I now indebted to them for this kindness that they offer me? I mean, we go through all of that rather than sometimes it's just about receiving. And the powerful thing I hold to also is that God calls the common man, and I don't mean that in a denigrating or a negative way, but I mean it doesn't mean that you have to have this. He doesn't say, well, you have to be this, because I always, when I was a child and listened to the stories, it always amazed me. I was always listening to the stories about the other, how Christ interacted with those who were outcast, or who were otherized, or who were treated differently, you know, the other, the one that we didn't get to really talk about or hear about. And so it always interests me that when he would speak in the synagogue or the temple, and then they would say, well, he's very learned. He has a lot of knowledge, but they would say, well, who is this? Yeah. Isn't this the son of Mary or Joseph? And we know the story of the birth. So sometimes I think in my mind, well, were they trying to like give a slight, like, you know, his mama wasn't married to his daddy, or, you know, or kind of thing, or like, who is this? And can anything good come out of Nazareth? That's like saying, can anything good come out of, you know, the North Side, or where I grew up in Colorado? Can anything good come out of Park Hill or out of the projects? You know, come on, seriously? You know, so he calls us to be, it doesn't matter who we are, where we are, he calls us to that, and he always extends his grace. Because again, it's like the gospel according to Robin, but when they brought the woman to him to be stoned, and he said, let who is without sin cast the first stone. And then there's a part where he's actually bending down and he's writing in the sand. I think this is the gospel according to Robin. I think he's writing down the names of those men and what they'd done, or probably maybe who had been with her. And then they're like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe we better like, you know, because it's like people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So that's always been impactful to me, that he calls us who we are, where we are. And Yaar, it's not easy. When I get angry, I don't always react the way that I should react. I know my body, I know the feelings I get. And there are times when I've had to go back and say, you know, not to a violent type of thing or something like that, but when I've had to go back and say, you know what, I need to revisit our conversation yesterday, because I think I may have gone more to the emotional side and really, so it's just a part of being human. But I think it's through that, yet we're still even endeared, because you're being vulnerable. You're coming back and saying to a person, I didn't mean to push you away, or I didn't mean to jump you, or I did, and this is why. And this is, you know, this is my thinking. But really it's to have that authentic, that real, that honest conversation that I think we're called to have in community. We're called to have that, and across communities. It's not only within our own community, but it's across community. Because I think I told you the other day, one of the things I would really like to see is more conversations of white people having conversations about race without us present, or what we call in my work, in their white space, where they don't have to worry about, well, I'm going to say something that now this brown or black or brown person is going to be offended, or they're going to think, oh my God, I'm a racist, or so they're not really able to have their own authentic, real conversation. And every space, every group needs their space. but then we also need to bridge and cross spaces. But that's what I hope to see coming out of this, because I have guarded optimism that things, because I read the Pew report that came out today, the nonpartisan Pew report that talked about the rise in statistics around hate crimes and incidents and things like that. So we would like to see it's decreasing, but the evidence tells us something else. But yet we can't be bound to just what we see, because I believe that God is working deeply in this time right now. I really believe that. I don't quite understand it, but I believe that He is working deeply to sit people still.
And to reveal things. Like there's just
Right.
things like coming out. It's like as it's like when you shake the diamond, like stuff like starts coming out in the dirt. It's like things things that are not meant to be there are like coming out, and like the things that are meant to be there are staying up.
Yeah.
And it just like what you were saying before of like having to like we obviously have emotions, like we get angry. And I remember like in the beginning after the George Floyd case, like when he got shot, and then like and then just what happened after that with the protests and everything, and just like having all these emotions of like, man, God, like this is so wrong, and like obviously this is 100% wrong, and then like trying to like hear like God's heart for like the truth in that, and then not straying too far into like my emotions, and then having like the gospel and just hearing like, okay, what does God have to say about this, and how do I view this in a way where I'm not the one who's just always like the angry, like the yelling, and like it's just like more so like how do I then extend like that love like in the midst of that. And then I just remembered like the next, I think a couple of weeks after that, I went to a church service, and I remember they were talking about it, and like it wasn't in a way that that I wanted to hear it. And like I just remember throughout that whole message, like my heart, like I can just like feel like the tugging on my heart, and I'm like, all right, God, like there's obviously like there's this disconnect where it's like I'm not believing this, and I'm not believing what they're saying here on the pulpit, and it's just like how do I then like fix my heart in the midst of this, God, and like fix my heart, it's like I can, it's like when David's saying like, like find the things that are like anxious in me, like reveal them to me, Lord. So it's just like more so like, yeah, like reveal your things to me, like, help me know the truth, obviously, but like how, like find the things that are anxious in me where it's like I stand on the truth, but like there's no negative emotions tied to that, there's no like not trying to like go off of my emotions, like, oh, I believe this and my emotion is this, like no, I believe this is the truth, and not there's no like not saying there's no emotions, but like there's no like, oh, this is just my opinion, it's just how I feel, but it's just more so no, this is the truth, and it also like I looked up also Ephesians 6:12, where it says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So when we see that, it's like we're made out of body, spirit, and soul. Yeah, body, spirit, and soul. And soul is like our emotions, and spirit, is our spirit that God's given us. And then the body is, what our soul and spirit is in. And then obviously, right here it's talking about the powers in the dark world. And in this world, there's obviously a little g God, which is Satan. So he's always scheming things. He's always like, he's called to steal, kill, and destroy. So when we see that, it's like we can't fully like stray to the other side of stray to the other side of like the anger or the hatred of certain like topics, or especially like with race and all that stuff. It's because like it's like we see the background of it where it says, like some people actually get possessed with like demons, and like they do things that the enemy wants them to do, like, or not even like possessed. It's just more so like, we have our thoughts, and sometimes we have, godly thoughts where we can receive that. Sometimes negative thoughts. So when we see crazy things like, like people shooting at schools, people shooting people down just for no reason, it's like we have to look beyond that instead of looking at the person. And going back to the Bible where it says, that Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, where it says that we should not just look at flesh and blood, which is us, but look at the evil spirits that are evil rulers or forces in the world, where we're now saying like now we're able to then extend that grace because we know like it's not just you, it's something that you've let in for you to like be worked through, which is the devil's schemes and stuff. And then that's how we know is to pray,
Right.
In the armor of God, to fast, all the things that are said in the Bible, and also to not just like look at that person and be like, oh, I hate you because he did this. And so it's just more so that's like another way to extend grace. I'm not saying like to be like, let's be friend, buddy, buddy, buddy. No, it's just like, but I'm not gonna hate you. I'm not gonna be full of anger, but it's just more so still believing, knowing the truth, sticking with the truth of what not trying to be buddy buddy with everyone, but also like obviously if you're, keep your distance and stuff like that. But just not being so angry to the point where, all your view is through anger, it's through lens of anger.
Right.
Yeah.
What I hear you say is being grounded. Mm-hmm. Grounded spiritually, emotionally, and what does that and that's what I would offer as I work with people around different areas or states, especially people of my Black and brown folks who happen to be in districts or places that are predominantly white, or they might be the only person of color, and they'll ask me, well, how do I continue, because it does get wearisome, it does get heavy, it does get all those things, all those words you could say. It gets depressing, it gets burdensome, and there is joy in the work when you see movement. But just honestly, that's what the conversations they'll have with me. And I talk with them a lot about self-care. I went to a conference called the White Privilege Institute, and it's a 5-day long conference. They had to call off this year because of COVID, but it's a 5-day long conference, and it's a very intense conference. And it's one where they hold spaces for different groups, intersectionality, Black, brown, indigenous, all different spaces, gender spectrum, and different abilities. But the last day is focused on self-care, because it's so intense, day 1, 2, 3, 4, that when you get to day 5, we have to talk about what does it mean to care for yourself. And I'm hearing you saying, I totally agree wholeheartedly. It's a spiritual piece to caring for yourself. It's being grounded in the word. And I go back to Galatians, I think it's 3:28, 29, where it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave or free man, we're all male or female. We're all one in Christ, and we are heirs of his because of his promise to Abraham. So I hold to that, I really hold to that, because it's like that grounds my faith. And I also am grounded in the root of that. Still here I am. Yeah. We're still in the mix. God has been gracious. God has been, because there are some things that happened through my life. I know firmly I should not be sitting in this chair right now. Yeah. That my path, God has intervened. Jesus has intervened in the nick of time. And I do mean the nick of time. And so I give honor for that, because I firmly believe that he said there's work for you there's work that needs to be done. And that's true, I think, for everybody. But then I think the other thing is to be grounded in is to have a community. Now, I'm very much an introvert. I'm not, people would think I'm an extrovert, but I'm really not an extrovert. I'm really an introvert. But what I do prize is that the circle or the support groups I have are very meaningful to me. And they're people that also fill my bucket and not just drain my bucket. And we give to each other. And drain is not a negative thing. I mean, we give. There's an ebb and flow and give and take. But I think we have to have people, and doing self-care, it's important to have people or communities in our life that stay us, that we can go to and sit in silence with and cry. And nobody says, why are you crying? They're just like, go ahead, Robin, let it out. I got you. That's all they need to say. So I hear you're saying that being grounded is so key spiritually and through music, or for you, it's through your gift of writing. Well, I'm not assigning you're grounded, but what I see is that your writing and your artistry grounds you and stays you in your walk and your faith and your getting in the scriptures. So that's what I would offer people, and that they ask me, well, what do I need to do? You need to be grounded, and what does that look like for you, and how do you live that out? So I really appreciate you speaking to the grounded piece
Yeah.
of the work.
That's so true. And it's like God gives us eyes to see beyond like what is seen. You know, it's like you can walk up to somebody and like you just see like the outer. But you know, sometimes we have this thing where it's just like I don't know what it is about you, but like it's just like love. Or I don't know what it is about you, but like you just have like this like light, and you're like, oh, I'm a Christian. Or it's like that light of Christ in us that draws us to each other, even if we don't know it. And like that's like like who God is and what He like brings to us, so that we can have eyes to see and all that. And it kind of like goes back to like when we see the things that are going on in this world, and we see like how racism has affected groups of people, and even shown people's hearts, and that it's just like, all right, God, like give us eyes to see what we really need to see, because there's just so many things going on in the background that we don't see, right?
True. That's so true.
What media, what the society is portraying to us, but we don't see all this other stuff that's going on around us. So it's like we have to have eyes to see it all. And like when God created us, He created us as one human race. So what does that mean? It's like we no longer, yes, we're different skin colors. We don't look at them as a skin color. We look at them as a brother in Christ, as a sister in Christ. We're no longer what is on the outside. You're more. It's like your spirit, not necessarily your spirit has a color, but it's like we all have a spirit within us,
Mm-hmm.
And God all created us in His own image. So if you're hating one person, you're hating your neighbor. Right?
That's true. That's true.
It's like you don't want to hear that. You don't want to, So it comes back to like as we extend grace to those who don't understand. It's like how do they then extend? It's like when they are hating for no reason, all this stuff. It's just like you're hating yourself, because we're made in the same image, in God's image, in His image for how He saw the whole world. He didn't say He just created an image of just Adam and Eve, but it's Adam and Eve and then all of us. It's all in His image. It's not just two people. One is not better than the other. So it's like when we see that, it's like, what's the point of hating? It's like it's so like nonchalant. Like, what's the point? But it's like there's obviously a deeper heart issue where either it's like it's like a family thing that where they grew up in it, or it's just people don't want to have. They don't want to understand. And it's up to them to not understand. But for those who do understand, for those who want to understand, we're then able to have that conversation with them because they desire to understand. It just reminds me also people who Jesus was preaching to and those who received it. Not all of them received it, but to those who wanted to do that came. And God wasn't angry at all of them. He wasn't. But He loved all of them equally. But just like those who came, He was able to have like that connection with. He was able to heal. He was able to just have that connection with. And it kind of reminds me of that, where it's like you're not gonna save everybody, you're not gonna make everybody understand. But for those who want to understand, have that conversation with them. No matter what skin color they are, And even if it's like me and you, like we both have different experiences with race, with racism and stuff like that. So it's like even us having a conversation, or if it's me and a Caucasian person, me and the Asian person, we all have our own our own issues, even with race, So just being able to have a conversation with those who are receptive and want to hear.
I think it starts with the children too. I was reading something the other day that said, if you want to change the world, if you want to abolish racism, teach the children differently.
Yep, definitely.
And I think I really believe in that because we know that it's something that's socialized within us, that we learn it. I can remember learning to be fearful of white people. I can remember being taught very intentionally to be fearful, because if you weren't fearful, it could cost you your life. And I know that especially in the South, visiting my grandparents, they were like, you need to be back on this side of town this side of the tracks before the sun goes down. You can't go to the movie theater on the weekday. You can only go on Thursday. And then when you go, you have to sit up in the balcony. You have to go in the back door. You can't drink out of that fountain. I mean, I remember those things very clearly. And coming from Colorado, going down into the South, I had a different narrative. It wasn't as overt. No, we couldn't sit at the counter at Woolworths, and there were some things we knew we couldn't do, but we walked with more privilege in the North. It wasn't as overt as it was in the South. And I think back on it, I think I'm probably really worried my grandparents, because I remember I would say, well, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not, kind of my own stubborn way. And they would say, well, my cousins would say, but you don't have to stay here. You get to get on the plane or the bus, it was the bus, and go back up north. We have to stay here and live in this. So I think it's about also, even though it's a socialization, we've been intentionally taught. So with that same intensity, we have to break that learning and reteach, build a different narrative. And that's why I think the education of our children and our youth and our church and our community is so critical across, the things that we do with the Church on Coronado Camp Create and all the other things, opportunities our youth can do to cross those boundaries and to have other people and other experiences is key, because I really believe it is. And I know every generation says that, probably my grandparents said it. It's up to you young people to carry us forward. And now I feel like I'm saying it, but yet it's the truth.
Yeah.
It remains the truth. So how do we prepare our young people? And that's why I'm so encouraged and uplifted in my conversations and my connection with you, because you have that, I don't know, it's just like, I think, okay, it's going to be all right. We're going to keep marching forward. It's going to be all right. We're going to keep making progress. We're going to keep moving. It's going to be all right, because you have faith, and you have stamina, and you have passion, and you have desire, and all of those things. So even though we say cliche, I think being older people, I know I really mean it. I'm depending upon the children to make a difference. That doesn't absolve me of my work, because my work is to make it so the children can be taught.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my work. Personally and professionally, so that the children have access to excellent teachers who live out a different walk, who are abolitionist teachers, rather than just try to figure out how to get along to get along. That's not the kind of education we need. So
I definitely feel like faith has such an important role in it, because when you are surrounded by, with your experiences, obviously my experience was different. Obviously we were in a time where, we didn't have to drink out of one certain, drinking station. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't more so direct. It was more so indirect, talk about the hair, or oh wow, we're such different skin colors. And then now it's wow, yeah, we are, Then it's more of it's more of that questions or anything, where for a certain thing where it's oh, people look at you differently, but you didn't know why. It's they weren't more direct, as in outspoken. But you can see the difference. You can see how the people will look at you different. You can see how your hair looks different than other people, or how they question you on your hairstyles, or make it it's just it makes you, some of them is self-conscious. It makes you feel self-conscious, where you're just what, I'm gonna do this one hairstyle for the rest of the year, so people don't ask me questions, or wow, I actually am a different skin color. Or sometimes for me it would be in high school, where during the time when we talked about slavery, I was the only Black person in the classroom, and it's just I hope you're not staring at me.
They are. They turn around and look at you well, tell us about it.
I'm let these people pass. Let's go to the next topic. And it wasn't that I wasn't oh, I wasn't confident to learn this, but it was just more so of what are these people thinking about me, because I'm the only Black person in this group. It's you can see yourself being different in that way, where you're
right.
Difference between all these different people. So it's it was more so that. And I feel faith, the reason why faith is so important, especially for everyone, but for young people, is because I feel as you get older, it's how you have that thing where it's you don't really care about what people say anymore.
Oh yes.
You're doing your own thing. You can't say nothing to me.
It happens at 50.
It's like as children, they don't know that. Like they want people's approval. They want, the approval of the world. And it's just like when you don't have that, once you have God, right? He's the only one who's able to approve you. He's the only one who's able to, show you your worth without looking at your worth through other people's eyes. Because they don't see your worth. That's your worth. And I feel like that's why it's wrong to engrave that in them, because it's like you can't hold the whole world in your hands. God can, like you can't like put all of that stress on yourself. You have to give it to God. And when you have that, when you build your faith up, like as a child, in that, it's like yes, obviously stuff still happens. Like we're not like it's not gonna be like problems are never gonna happen again. But it's just more so we're able to walk in them without not being too affected by it. You're able to go through it without being as affected by it as you would if you were, if you didn't have that faith. You didn't have God to like hold on to or pray to. You didn't have that outlet. So yeah. So I think
Yeah, I'm mindful of our time, but I want to. I always have kind of ways that I like to close things out with, and so I'm going to ask. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. If you were asked to deliver a sermon, and I'm not saying you will be. I'm not prophesying. I'm just saying if you were asked to deliver a sermon and you had to kind of give a topic to kind of bring our thinking to a close, or kind of that final thought summation to bring it to a close, what would be the topic of the sermon, or what would be your parting words that you would want to leave with the group around the topic of God, grace, and race? What would be the message that you would want people to take from this?
Just to like put it all in a close, it would be because God is able to extend that grace and that love, and to see you as who you are. Now we're able to see others the same way. We're not, because we also share the same problems. No matter what skin color we are, we share in the same problems. We share in the same pains. Now we have something that we can share with others that's beyond skin color. We don't, just because we see with our eyes the skin color, just because we see with our eyes what's in front of us, it's like there's just so much more deep that we need ourselves to connect with. God created us to connect in that way with other people. So because God has extended that grace and that love, we can then extend that grace and love, because at the end of the day, we're not perfect. At the end of the day, we share the same hardships, trials, and it's better to love than to hate. Yeah.
Cool, awesome. All right. And I will answer the same question, because I don't feel it's fair to ask you and then not ask myself. I would say, come and let us reason together through the Spirit of Christ and in the wisdom of the Word. Let us reason together so that we can build a better world. We can build a better future. We can build bridges rather than gaps or chasms. So come and let us reason together through the love of Christ.
One big happy thing.
Yeah, and yes, and a real family, because families aren't always happy. I know from my own, but I do know that they're my family and they love me and I love them. And that's that God calls us to be in family together. So, well, I want to thank you for the conversation. I actually am going to tell you, I appropriated, or I won't use the word stole, but I appropriated your fourth bullet where you said also people want to seek to be understood. Because I had unconditional love, I had to know they mattered, and security. So I'm now adding a fourth bullet, and I will give you credit for it, Yaar. They also want to be understood. So I think that was powerful. So I want to thank you for pushing my thinking and giving me food to think on and fuel to rebuild and regenerate my energy. You're a beautiful young lady inside and out. I'm enjoying your book. I can't wait till we can get in person. I can get my autograph. But I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for who you are. For who you are.
Yeah.
And this hopefully will not be our last time. We'll continue to talk, but I just want to thank you.
Thanks for having this conversation with me. I love with just hearing like different generations and hearing your story. You know, it's like I felt like I connected with you more, and I was like, wow, like the things that we read in history books, and like you went through it. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
I connected.
Power of conversations.
Yeah, the
Power of
power of
conversation.
understanding as well. So
That's right.
really
That's right.
enjoyed the conversation, and I hope those who are listening, I hope you enjoyed it as well. Hope you're able to receive something from this, and also be able to go and have that conversation with someone who's not the same circle, with your family members, whoever's in your circle. Yeah, and I just hope you guys have a blessed rest of your evening, and I hope to have this conversation again.
Thank you. And visit us next Wednesday, the same space and same time for the next talk. I'm not sure quite what Father Colin and Mother Laurel are calling them, but I like calling them just round table talks, or maybe I guess rectangle talks, since we don't have a round table. But still, look forward to seeing and engaging with people next Wednesday as well. Thank you, Yaar.
Great, thank you.